But the thing I kept going back to as I was listening to the clip was Herb Abrams' interruption.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. You must have been, as they say, taken aback at that moment.
Yeah. It isn't the first time that it happens in upcoming shows. I mean, I think Herb was getting increasingly desperate because of his situation and what was going on with the UWF. And he, as we'll hear in this, but then, he continues it on. And I begin to get really upset with him for calling in because he knew when I was on the air. And especially in future weeks when the show was going through some incredibly hard times financially to keep it on. He called the station and tried to take this time slot over himself, as we'll hear in future weeks. But anyway, that was the, as soon as I heard the Herb Abrams voice, I just started running through all this stuff in my head about what was coming up,
My head is exploding. Yeah. I was around during that era too, as you know, and my head is absolutely exploding because it's like desperate little guy. Yeah. I mean, really desperate in many different ways, as history has proven.
Yeah. So Herb weasels his way in several sections of this episode today.
Yes, he does. So let us go now to see what exactly. Well, it's Herb Abrams being Herb Abrams.
Exactly.
Hello, Herb.
Yes, John, how are you?
What's going on? We're on the air.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say it's always a pleasure to be on your show. I think it's probably the finest wrestling talk show on the air today.
Well, I certainly appreciate that.
It's certainly an honor to be to have Eddie Gilbert on the other line. Eddie, and nice to meet you over the telephone.
Thank you very much, sir.
Let me first express some of the thoughts that are running through my mind and some of the things going through the UWF, and then I'll like to make a little comment to Edward about something that he may be interested in. The first thing that I'd like to first say publicly is that I'm quite appalled. Friday night, I guess I knew that Mr. Hogan was going to be on television, but I happened to be switching the channels because I prefer Jay Leno myself, and I saw Hogan come out in his Suburban Commando outfit, which looks very nice on him. But what I was appalled about was when Arsenio Hall asked Hulk Hogan, and I think it's pretty close to what he asked him, what is the difference between acting and wrestling? And Hulk Hogan remarked, there is no difference. And I heard that, and first of all, I couldn't believe what I heard. And then he said, wrestling is sports entertainment. And he reiterated that number of times, that he goes in the ring to make his fans be happy with what he's doing, as he does the same thing on the screen. And then, of course, Arsenio Hall, I think, was a little surprised himself and started asking a little more elaborate questions, which I don't even want to go into, about blood and such. My statement to that and my feelings are, number one, if Hulk Hogan wants to say what he says about the World Wrestling Federation, that's fine, because there's no question in my mind and the minds of other fans across the country that the World Wrestling Federation is nothing more and mere other than sports entertainment, and they do that quite well. But the Universal Wrestling Federation, as I have stated so many times in the past, was developed and brought about by myself, Bruno Sammartino, Lou Albano, some of the greats in the wrestling world, for one purpose and one purpose only, and that was to determine a real, true world heavyweight wrestling champion, which we have in right now in the likes of a Dr. Death Steve Williams, because everything that goes on in our line of business is not purely sports entertainment, and I take total offense to that statement that Hogan referred to wrestling, quote unquote, as being sports entertainment. And I think that had he said World Wrestling Federation, I, of course, would have been delighted, and it would not have bothered me.
Okay, Herb.
I'm quite offended by this, and our attorneys are right now looking into the matter, and I'm sure that Mr. Hogan and Mr. Arsenio Hall, Paramount Communications and such, are going to have to deal with this matter.
All right, so you say, Herb,
we're not going to let go.
Herbie,
spending the last few years developing the Universal Wrestling Federation.
Herbie.
Yes, Jonathan.
So obviously I rate about that, but let me ask you a quick.
A little too much coffee this morning.
I'm sorry.
A little too much coffee this morning, huh?
Actually, Edward, I haven't had coffee at all. I've had 2 vodka martinis.
Okay, 2 martinis, vodka martinis.
3 olives and 3 onions.
All right.
All right, so and the second topic you wanted to talk about was something that I guess you alluded to on television a couple of times, and were sent faxes by Titan Sports to quit referring to Mr. James Hellwig of professionally known as AKA the Ultimate Warrior. Now, you want to give us an update on that, Herb?
Well, quite frankly, we really didn't want to disclose any of this information, but what's happened is that we went on national broadcast saying that the Ultimate Warrior could possibly be entering the World Wrestling Federation.
The World Wrestling Federation?
Excuse me. Could be entering the Universal Wrestling Federation.
The vodka and martinis.
Well, upon that telecast, we immediately received a letter and fax of such commentary by the World Wrestling Federation, which, not to go into the detail as to what was in the contents of those letters, but in any event, our attorneys are working on that. We've certainly responded to that. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's public knowledge that the Ultimate Warrior is not working for the World Wrestling Federation actively right now as a wrestler. Mm-hmm. Whatever is going on between there is strictly their business and no business, quite frankly, of anyone else. But, of course, people speculate. In the wrestling business, as you know, you may speculate, we may speculate, other promoters may speculate, the fans may speculate, and certainly these wizards that use their pen and write all these whatever you call them, these sheets. Everyone else speculates. The fact of the matter is, most people...
You don't like the sheets, do you, Herb?
The truth is. And the truth is what we've always strived for. Truth and justice, the American way. Just like
and justice will prevail.
You like that. Mm. Now, the fact of the matter is that, yes, in fact, we have been negotiating with James Hellwig and talking to an individual. There's nothing wrong with talking to an individual. Reminds us, of course, Amendment number 1 of the Constitution.
Freedom of speech,
yes,
right?
We are speaking with Mr. Hellwig. Yes, we are interested in Mr. Hellwig. And yes, we may get Mr. Hellwig, a.k.a. the Ultimate Warrior. Which is, I mean, if he comes with us, fine. If he doesn't, that's fine, too. But these tactics of back and forth, it's pure nonsense. I can go back and say that when we received letters from them about Andre the Giant, and that they had an exclusive contract with Andre the Giant. Well, Andre the Giant worked for the Universal Wrestling Federation and has a contract with the Universal Wrestling Federation. In fact, we played a show this past Monday, just to give you an example as the contrast with this Hellwig situation. We played a show Monday on national television where Andre the Giant was being interviewed by Captain Lou Albano.
When was that taped?
Andre the Giant says on national television to Lou Albano, "Yes, Lou, don't worry. I will be with the UWF." And he says this on air himself. So, in fact, the tactics that this organization uses is strictly, intimidation tactics, and we certainly will never step down or take a step backwards towards them and the way they do things.
Well, it's certainly almost like a David and Goliath type of confrontation, though, Herb, at this point.
It's not even a question of a David and Goliath kind of. If we make a comment or we say something, and we obviously get some type of response from it, we naturally have to defend what we say.
Right.
Any time in the wrestling business, John, and you know this, including like with Ric Flair, everyone is doing what they think is best for their business. And we have been very successful in securing certain talent where we have built up our organization. Well, we've got some, I feel, very competent talent, and the talent and we've made a public challenge. Our champion, Steve Williams, has made a public challenge.
Well, Dr. Death,
Hulk Hogan, and the Universal Wrestling Federation has also put up at stake $100,000 if either one of these two men could beat
$100,000?
Steve Williams.
Herb, $100,000?
Absolutely. Would you like to step into the ring
for $100,000? I'll go in there. I would get you milk.
Step into the ring. You got to beat him.
I'd like to go into the ring with you for $100,000.
Are you willing to do that?
Sure.
Well, I tell you, quite frankly, I don't think you got much of a shot.
Come on, Herb. It's if I win.
Did you see what I did to Mr. Red?
Yes, you threw that.
I think you should watch that tape over again before you make those comments.
You threw that cup of water in his face, and of course you were wishing it was something else in that cup.
Yes. Well, it may have been something else. I may have just said that. No, that's exactly what it was.
Okay. But I wanted you. I give you.
In any event, if Mr. Gilbert would like to vie for that $100,000 against Mr. Williams, he's certainly welcome to step into the ring.
Eddie, you want that $100,000?
Well, I mean, he brought up a good thing over there about challenging the other champions and his champion being Steve Williams. First off, if I was going to start a wrestling organization and I wanted someone to be my world champion that I was going to challenge other champions with, it'd either be Dr. Death Steve Williams or Rick Steiner. And
definitely great here.
Definitely got the best man as a champion. Steve Williams is a very, very good friend of mine. And that's the reason why, if you'll think back to 1987, Ric Flair never really wrestled Steve Williams, but a couple of times because he didn't really want to wrestle him. He was scared of it. And
there's no question about
no one is going to step in the ring with Steve Williams because he is a true and quote wrestling champion. He'll hurt somebody in a second. So he's got a good champion there.
Well, we appreciate that, but I'd like to know if you'd like to just take that.
He just said he was good
friends
with him.
I'll tell you this, if that's what you're saying. I mean, I've never backed down anything in my life. I mean, I certainly would try it, but I know that you've got the best man as a champion. I know I'm not a coward, and I'm not chicken anything whether it comes to booking or wrestling. So, I'd be willing to take it,
Wrestlers in the business today as well, and starting, I think, in February, we're doing a tournament for, I'm not quite sure, but I think you're about, what, 225, 230 maybe?
Yeah.
But we're doing a thing for the light heavyweight championship, and I think you'd be an ideal candidate to carry that coveted crown.
Well, I'll certainly hook you guys up with numbers in case you don't have each other's number. Herb, we have to run here, take our next commercial break, and lots of calls on the line for Mr. Gilbert. We appreciate you coming on the air with us and giving us your opinions on what's going on in UWF.
It was my pleasure. I wish you both a very nice weekend.
Thank you, Herb. Minya. But, hey.
Is he gone?
He's gone now.
Thank God. Okay.
Had those vodka martinis happening. Oh. Heavy duty, double fisting them. Well, I thought he was going to talk about the way I've been saying that his I've been criticizing as far as some of the things I've been watching on his television.
Well, I just thought he was going to talk about something worthwhile.
Yeah, well,
I think he just wasted some of our time. So.
Yeah, I know.
Thank God, says Eddie Gilbert.
Yeah, what a bizarre segment that was, and I think Herb alluding to the fact that he didn't have any coffee, but perhaps something stronger. I mean, I could recall conversations with him where he was snorting coke on the other line. You could hear it, and he was just out of line. And I was going back and forth because I was really getting sick of the guy. I mean, because I did so much work for him when he launched the company. Launching it at my convention in 1990, setting up and promoting all of the New York initial shows for him in January 1991, and doing a hell of a job for him, and then getting checks that bounced and all of that.
Were those the shows at the hotel?
At the Penta, yeah.
Yes, yeah, okay.
They were all my listeners. They were my listeners. I mean,
I know they were. Yeah, absolutely. I was ringside at those shows.
Yeah, and then there was a snowstorm, which we had a wrestling fans convention and on the day after a snowstorm, and attendance was down, and I got the blame for it. Like I can control the snow coming out of the sky, but I couldn't control the snow that was going into his nose constantly. Oh. Hey, listen,
John, I do declare.
No punches, because as like I said, I don't listen to these shows until I upload them, and I hadn't heard them in 30 years. And then it just brings back all of these memories that really quite, they get me a little riled up because of the things that he did, and him calling in and interfering with my show and just calling unceremoniously and getting on the air and saying outrageous things like, he still has Andre the Giant under contract, and he eventually sues a 14-year-old kid, Andrew Goldberger, because Andrew put something in a newsletter that might have been read by 10, 15 people, and Herb sues a kid. I mean, so the guy was out of control, and he was all over the place, and this segment proved it. And so interesting radio there with Mr. Abrams, and Eddie was polite.
Yes, he was. Probably more than he should have been at that point.